Okay, today is Friday. It is 2 a.m. 2:07 a.m. It is February 27th. So so now what is an okay, so I have to figure out what my edge is. I haven't really thought about what edge is. What is an edge? Okay, what is an edge that I can do over and over and over again, right? So so what is an edge? Okay? What is an edge? What is an edge? Okay, so when I'm thinking about an edge, I'm thinking about a movie where these ice skaters, ice figure skaters, wear these skates that have edges on it, and you have to have a very good edge in order to have precise control of the movement while moving. Okay, so then in trading, what is an edge? What is an edge? What specifically is an edge in trading? What is the edge? What makes up the edge? Okay, what makes it an edge? Okay, I'm just talking to myself, so I have to hear it for myself to figure this out. Okay, what is an edge? An edge is something that gives me a higher probability, whether it's a single trade or multiple trades, that when I take that trade, I have an advantage. I have a statistical advantage. Okay? That's an edge. That's an edge, right? So if I take one trade and if my efficacy, so let's give an example, a 50-50, okay? Let's say I take a trade that is a 50-50, okay? It's a solid 50-50. But if I make it as a 2-to-1, okay? If I make it a 2-to-1 and it's still a 50-50, I have an edge. That's an edge, okay? When I take that trade, it's a 50-50 thing. But when I win, I get double what I lose. Okay? So even though it's 50-50, I win. So that's an edge. Okay, that is an edge. Okay? So that is precisely the edge. It's a statistical advantage. It's a statistical probability advantage. It's an advantage that I can take. That is an advantage. Okay? So so that is an edge. Okay, so now, okay, I'm making a simple. That's a simple thing that I can point to. Okay, I can point to that as a simple thing. Okay, that is my edge. All right, that's an edge. But when I take that trade, when I take that trade, when I take that trade, okay, when I take that trade, my mind and body has to be able to coordinate it so that I'm able to properly take the trade, which means that I have to be in a state of mind, mind and body, be able to execute that trade. Okay, so then the flip side is then the strategy. It's the strategy. Then it boils down to the strategy. Okay, it boils down to the strategy. I've already defined it as a statistical probability that when I take that trade, I have an edge. And how do I steer that edge? I steer that edge by being able to anticipate, okay? Based on what the price action is doing, anticipate with a statistical probability that when I make that conclusion with my own way of deciding how it's determined, okay, then I have that edge. That's my edge. That is my edge, okay. That's my edge. So when I look at these prices, the prices goes to certain areas and behaves in a certain way. It behaves in a certain way. Okay? When the price starts to move up, okay, then it's moving up. When it's moving sideways, it's moving sideways. When it's moving down, it's moving down. Okay? Now, how far it moves is based on the support and resistance area, right? Because when it's trending down, it's gonna move towards that support, and when it's moving up, it's gonna move towards its resistance, and it's gonna behave in a certain way and interact with that area where the price support and resistance is, and then based on its reaction, it'll determine whether it's going to continue or not continue. Okay, so that's the whole crux of how trading is. Okay, trading is based on the predictability of where the price is going to be next based on what I see. Okay, so I have to formulate. Then it falls down to me being able to define what I am looking at to help me determine what the price is going to do. Okay, so I have to formulate that. Once I formulate it, then I can use it to determine how I stage my trades. Okay, so it's the intricacies of knowing which direction it's going to go. Then I take the trade based on what I see, and then it's going to have extra terrestrial impacts on it, such as the inherency of the spreads that's there. That's one. And when it moves, it doesn't just move cleanly. It moves with certain amount of noise a factor into it. Because, for instance, even though the price is moving up, some people might be selling it. So on a momentary basis, even though it's going up, it may pull back a little bit, and then after the selling has been absorbed, it'll start to go back up. Okay, so that's how price moves, and so I have to be careful of it if I want to take the price change from here to here. I have to be aware that sometimes it's going to pull back, and so when it pulls back, I have to be able to absorb that in order to maintain my trade intact, to keep it intact until I go from point A to point B. Okay, that's how it is. So then I have to figure out what's going to tell me, what is going to show me, what is going to be the indicator that shows me that the price is gonna move. Okay, something's gonna show me that the price is gonna move. Okay, so when I'm looking at here, I'm currently looking at UC, and I mean, if I look at here from essentially at about 6 o'clock, from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock, so essentially for 5 hours, it's been moving sideways. The price has been moving sideways for 5 hours. Okay, it's been moving sideways for 5 hours. And if I look at a calendar, there's only a bill auction for the U.S. Okay, Friday. And then there's the PPI, core PPI that's coming up on Friday at about, what is that? At about 3:30, right? 3:30? 15:30? So currently, so in about 5 hours, so that's going to be before market open, I think, okay, right? So currently it's 10, so blah, 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 right? About 3, so it's at about 6 o'clock, 5 to 6 o'clock, there's going to be some PPI information that's going to be released to the news, and that's why the market is moving sideways. So that means I have to be able to predict, okay? I have to be able to react properly, which means that I have to see what the price is doing in anticipation of what it's going to do, because it's showing based on its display what the price is going to do, okay? And so I have to, it's all about the edge, okay? At the core, it's the edge. At the core, it is the edge. Yeah, it is. It is the edge. Okay, in order for me to be consistent, I have to have the edge. Okay, when I have the edge, without the edge, even if I'm mentally and physically consistent, I'm not going to be consistent. So I may be mentally and physically consistent, but if I don't have the strategy right, I'm not going to be consistent, because I will be all over the place. So my strategy has to be consistent. Okay, my strategy is the edge. Okay, my strategy. Anybody can be mentally and physically capable of doing something. Okay, anybody can do that. That will be the outer shell of being a consistently profitable trader, right? So that means that I have to have the right strategy. If I have the right strategy, if I have the right strategy, then that is the edge. Ultimately, it boils down to what the edge is, okay? So essentially, it's the setup. Okay? How I perform the setup is essentially is essentially uh is essentially knowing how to. Okay, so that's, wow, okay. So the edge is figuring out. The edge essentially is a technique that I use to figure out where the price is going to go. That's it, essentially. To have a reliable means for me to determine, to have a reliable, statistically advantageous, even if it's 50-50. Even if it's 50-50. But the complement of that is that when I take the profit, okay, the 50-50 is essentially, there's a factor that's involved in it, okay? If it's a 1-to-1 50-50, then it's a 50-50. It's a loss, okay? It's a 50-50. The pure 50-50 is if it's 1-to-1, R to R, plus it's a 50-50 win to loss. That's a pure 50-50. You can't make any money from that. But If it's 50-50 with a R to R that's favorable towards me, then that is definitely an edge. Okay, that's an edge. However slight it is, if it's leaning towards me, then it is an edge that I can take, right? So am I looking for something that is that is a massive edge? Okay, that's called an A plus setup. Okay, that is called an A plus setup. A plus setup is a massive edge. Okay, it's giving me a massive edge. Okay, that is an A plus setup. That is essentially an A plus setup, which is essentially the edge. Okay, that is the edge. If the setup is like a B, then there's a slight edge. But if it's a C, probably it's a 50-50 kind of thing, and I would have to be more selective. Okay, so if the setup is, well, it can't be. If it's a C type of setup, then it's not a good setup, because it could go either way. So if it's a C type of setup, it's essentially, it could just swing either way, which is not a favorable kind of situation. But if it's a grade that's B or an A or B kind of a setup, there's going to be a slight edge, which allows me to make, okay. So now that I'm looking at, so what makes it an A plus setup? Okay, so what makes it an A plus setup? What makes it an A plus setup? I've already defined it as the soft support and a breakout. When I take those trades, see the price moves. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this like a 30-minute view here, and it's like, it's, even though it's between support and resistance, it moves based on break and retest. Okay, so it does this. That's essentially a break and retest movement. It moves that way. It moves that way, right? So that means, so what I have to do is, for those strategies that I have, with those two setups that I have, which is essentially is the a breakout and a break and retest, which essentially is what that is, because it's resistance is popping up, drops down, and then breaks out, which happens all the time. It happens whenever there is a channel. When there's a channel, that is essentially a break and retest. And if I tilt it this way, it's called a range bound kind of thing. That's what it is. But when I change the angle a little bit, that's essentially is the break and retest kind of situation. Okay. So then the edge that I have, essentially, when I look at the soft support, is very similar to, and I can use it in a range bound situation where the price is bouncing up and down, where it has established a support. Okay, that could also be considered a soft support. That means that all I have to do, because it is already known to me, all I have to do is apply that strategy around the support and resistance areas. Okay, around the support and resistance areas, to elevate the efficacy of my trade. Okay, to elevate the efficacy of my trade, I take those trades only in those areas, which will elevate the grade of my setup to be an A plus setup, because I'm only taking it in that area with specific criteria that allows me to say, if the price is there around that support and resistance area, and then if it behaves in this manner, okay, like if it's breaking out, what it's going to do is it's going to break, drop, and then break above, hold, and it paints another candle, okay, then there is a high likelihood that it's going to continue until it reaches the resistance area. That's called a breakout. Now the support is going to be when the price goes to that support area, okay, and then bounces, okay. That is the soft support, okay. So so I will be looking at these two things, constantly looking at these two things to see how they fit into my trading. And so I can look at it from a 1 minute time frame, and I can also look at it from a 5 minute time frame, and I can also look at it for the 15-minute time frame to see if those things align between those three time frames, to see how long I can hold on to it to maximize my setup. So essentially, the edge that I have, if I were to clearly define, substantiate my edge, it is the definition and the clarity of my setups. That's the edge, okay? Everybody has the mind. They're smarter than I am, and they're physically more capable. Everybody is. But the edge is defining the particular setup that gives me that edge in the market, okay? For me, it is that soft support, and the other is the break and retest, which happens all the time. And so if I use that correctly, then I have substantiated my edge.